Okay, we're ready to begin. Okay, so I think, do we want to check if there's anyone outside before we begin? Yeah. Okay, good evening everyone. My name is Rita and a very warm welcome to Clearing the Air, Helping Your Child Stay Vape-Free. This is a hybrid seminar and a webinar organized by Families for Life. The Families for Life movement, please allow me to share a little bit more about us, aims to build strong and resilient families through national celebrations, community events, marriage and parenting programs and resources, as well as online digital campaigns. Through a wide range of programs, initiatives, and events, Families for Life encourages families and partners to strengthen family bonds. Today's webinar is a part of this effort to empower families. We're also very thankful to be supported today by the Institute of Mental Health, the Ministry of Education, and Fair Community Services. We're also very delighted to have everyone here join us today, whether you're here in person or tuning in online. Thank you for taking the time to be here together with us as a community to navigate this important topic. Now, let me set some context before we begin. In recent weeks, there have been several announcements and tightened measures on vaping and intermediate use. As parents, many of us are concerned about how we can keep our children safe from vaping. Vaping actually has been illegal in Singapore since February 2018, with prohibitions on selling, purchase, possession, and the use of e-vaporizers. Since 1st September 2025, Singapore has strengthened enforcement with a zero-tolerance stance against vaping, with increased penalties meted out to those caught vaping and intermediate-laced vaping. Okay, take a breath. Now, 1 in 3 seized vapes contain intermediate, a dangerous prescription anesthetic which can cause severe health effects. Now, this substance is now classified as a Class C controlled drug under the Misuse of Drugs Act, carrying higher penalties for those caught using intermediate-laced vape. These are important measures to help us fight this battle against vaping as we strive to keep our children and youth vape-free. Today, we are here to find out more from the panel of experts on what we can do as parents. All of them are also fellow parents. Maybe you can say hello and just give a wave. Yeah. Who have the same concerns as us. To get us started on this important conversation today, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Ms. Sher-Li Torrey. Sher-Li. Please allow me to introduce Sher-Li. Sher-Li is a Families for Life Council member with a deep passion to build strong and resilient families. She plays an important role representing the Families for Life Council who organizes this session. Sher-Li is also a Compass Advisory Council member with the Ministry of Education. Compass stands for Community and Parents in Support of Schools, and the Council advises MOE on ways in which school-home community collaboration could be enhanced. As a mother of 2 teenagers herself, Sher-Li brings with her first-hand experience as a parent in navigating challenging and difficult conversations with her teens. Joining Sher-Li on the discussion today, we have 3 distinguished guests. I'll leave it to Sher-Li to introduce them. But before I hand over the time to Sher-Li, please allow me to just make a few announcements. Do note that there will be photography and videography on site, and the Zoom session is being recorded. Photos and recordings may be used by Families for Life and its partners for legitimate purposes, including marketing, and will be uploaded on our public sites and channels. We will kickstart the discussion today with questions that parents have posed to us during the registration. Throughout the session, you may also post your questions by scanning this QR code on the screen here. So we will be keeping an eye on your questions and the top questions that have been upvoted. Please do keep your questions clear and concise to allow time for the panel to take more questions today. We welcome all questions and we seek your understanding. Let's keep the tone constructive today. Without further delay, please let me hand over the time to Sher-Li. Sher-Li, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, parents, caregivers and all. Thank you for joining us today for this very important panel discussion. If you are like me, a parent, I think you will feel very strongly that this is a very important topic, something very close to our hearts. There is a growing concern about vaping, not just about the health risks it poses, but also the societal and the psychological challenges it brings. So as parents, we may feel that very uncertain or even anxious about how best to address this issue. So today's session will aim to share some of the insights, hopefully also offer some practical strategies on how to engage and help our children. Now, join me now to welcome our three distinguished panelists who bring unique perspectives to this discussion, and I'd like to invite them on stage. We'll start off by inviting Mr. Ashraf Maniam. He is the principal of Ang Mo Kio Secondary School and also a board member of the Singapore Anti-Narcotics Association. Next is Ms. Ee-Lyn, who is the Assistant Director of Fei Community Services and a family life educator. Last but not least, joining us online, all the way from Japan, is Associate Professor Daniel Fung, who is the CEO of IMH and also a member of our advisory panel on parenting. He will join us online. Hi, from, hi. Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Fung. So maybe for the benefit of everyone, I will probably get each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves first. Maybe we start off with Mr. Ashraf Maniam.
All right, very good evening to all of our parents who are here in person, as well as the parents who are dialing in online. So as Sher-Li has shared, I'm Ashraf. I'm a principal of Ang Mo Kio Secondary School, and I also serve as a board member on the Singapore Anti-Narcotics Association. It's a real joy to be here. And I know I've been invited to just share some very, very quick opening remarks. So there were just three very quick things that I wanted to share with our parents today. Just to set the context, it's nothing about education. I'm sure there'll be questions later about what we do in schools, and I'm more than happy to expound on that and to explain what we've been doing in schools. But three quick points, I thought, just to set the context for this session. The first is to really just echo what Sher-Li mentioned earlier, that vaping is a serious issue. It's not a new issue. It's been with us for several years now, but we are all becoming a bit more enlightened on the harmful effects that vaping has. Vapes with etomidate have even more severe health effects, mental effects for a child. So the fact that we're spending time this evening to talk about this very serious issue, I think that's something that we should celebrate. I know vaping is not something that's positive, but the fact that we're here to learn from one another, I think that's something that's important. Second point is really just to offer a note of encouragement and affirmation to all of our parents here. I'm a parent myself, and I'm an educator. I have to meet students who have to handle vaping addiction, and I know it can be very, very overwhelming. So I just wanted to say that the fact that parents here have taken time this evening to spend time with us to learn, to me that's a big part of the battle won, right? That we're really keen to learn from one another and we're here to support one another. So that's the second point. Third and very, very quick point here is just to encourage all of us to adopt a community village mindset when we think about vaping. I think a lot of times we are all very fixated about the hats that we're using, whether I'm an educator, or whether I'm a volunteer, or whether I'm a parent. And when you think about your own locus of control, this problem of vaping can seem extremely intimidating. But I think if we take this mindset that it takes a village to raise a child, we're all here to reinforce the efforts that we are all taking, I think that's quite reassuring. It's quite comforting, but it's also sobering and humbling as well, because it reminds us that we all have a part to play and that we should all really work together as a team. All right, so yeah, just a few quick points just to set the context. Thank you, Sher-Li.
Thank you very much for that. I think very well said. Next, I'll invite Ee-Lyn to share briefly and to introduce yourself as well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Sher-Li. Well, my name is Ee-Lyn, so I'm the Assistant Director of Fei Community Services. So what I do is we conduct parenting programs in the community. Like what Ashraf said, we offer like Triple P, I conduct tuning to teens group work, as well as the various parenting programs. So there are resources that are available in the community, as what Ashraf rightly pointed out. You know, parents, you're not alone. I think the fact that you're all here together, I think is a good, safe space that we can all learn together and journey together. And today, today we're all here really united with a common purpose and vision to how can we keep our youth and children safe. I think that's where we are coming from. And like both of them, I'm also a mother of 2 teens. Okay, and so, I'm here to just share some of the experiences I have as a mom, and also some of the experience that we have, supporting many parents as well in our region. So thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, can I invite Dr. Fung to share with us and introduce himself via the Zoom platform? Thank you. Dr. Fung, are you there?
Yeah, everyone, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, perfect.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I know that there's a bit of a delay, so can we start the deck of slides so that I can start to introduce myself? I am the father of five grown-up children. I now have five grandchildren, and I'm very concerned about this issue of vaping because it started, I think, widespread use 2015, but it has been around, the new forms of vape, the electronic cigarette, around 2000. So it's been 25 years it's been in the market. Next slide, please. And whenever I show data, I've been showing this slide, since 2024 because this is alarming. The amount of rising of vaping as an increasing problem is, and this is Singapore making a particular product illegal. So this is worrying. And there is kind of a myth that it is safer than cigarettes and very appealing in its marketing. Not in the traditional marketing, you don't see it on TV, but people don't watch TV anymore. It's all on social media, and influencers have been used. And this really is a gateway. The idea is, of course, when vaping was derived, it's really meant to help people who are smoking to stop the smoking habit. And we know that smoking is bad for health. What vaping has done is it's attracted, through this very aggressive marketing, young people. And this is a concern. And this is a gateway, potentially, to other drugs because of the way vapes are created and the substances that can be mixed in with it. Next slide, please. So there are many reasons. A lot of it has to do with because it's social media and social influence. Friends, online trends would have an impact. And it is not that is less harmful than smoking. What's probably the problem is that we don't really know some of the long-term effects of vaping on the lungs. And a lot of people, because of nicotine, there's a misconception that it relieves stress and, well, if my friends are getting it and it looks quite harmless, why not? And it's very flavorful, right? Because you can put anything in there. And despite the bans, excess appears to be relatively common until recently. Next slide. And of course, what are the risks? That there are health risks, okay? It may impact all kinds of things. We're only beginning to unearth. And then now with etomidate is just one of the substances people have put into vapes. You can put anything, cannabis, marijuana, anything that you can imagine. For mental health, the addiction to nicotine is an addiction. An addiction is an illness. It creates tolerance and withdrawal effects if you stop. Then there's also increased risk of other potentially emotional problems, and it might affect school performance, withdrawal from family, and like I said before, it could potentially be a gateway drug. Next slide. So how do we prevent? Well, I think the family is terribly important. All the public media messages will not make a difference if the parents take a very easy stand on this. And I say this because about 5 years ago, or maybe a little longer, one of my children brought home a vape, and actually he was vaping, but he said it belonged to his friend, and we accepted it as such. Years later, when he's much older, he admits to vaping, and he was able to stop because his girlfriend stopped him and explained to him the risks. But what if he didn't have the girlfriend? What if the family continued to be ignorant of this problem? It's something real, and I think there is a policy now on enforcement. In terms of sales and marketing, we need to punish those who smuggle. But I think more importantly, we need to create an environment where people understand vaping is like a drug addiction. It's as serious. And the harm can be worse because it's widely used. If you look across the world, the numbers are high. Last slide. Yeah, thank you. So there's a call to action. Vaping is not just a habit, it's an addiction. Okay, prevention should start early. Prevention is always better than cure. If you are addicted, it's harder. I put a picture of my family here because it reminds me that I need to be aware of this, and I want my children and my grandchildren not to grow up in a society where vaping is widely available. Around the world, healthcare professionals are trying to persuade people to stop. But I think the intervention must start with our families. We can safeguard the health and future of our young. So that's my short 5 minutes spiel. I don't know whether I kept the time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's very useful. I learned a couple of things even from the slides alone. So I think tonight what we're really going to talk about, there's several topics. Firstly would be the signs and symptoms of vaping, why children and teenagers vape, how to engage our children, and last but not least, some of the avenues to seek help. I'll start off by the first most important question, which is what are some of the telltale signs that a child is vaping? Maybe Ashraf, you can share with us? Yeah.
Testing. Yeah. Thanks so much, Sher-Li, for that question. I think it's a very pertinent question because, as Dr. Fung mentioned earlier, it's always important to try and catch it early. I think prevention is better than cure. So I'll share a bit of my experience as an educator on what are some of the possible early signs of detecting vaping. I tend to look at it from three broad categories. I think there are physical signs, there are behavioral signs, as well as environmental signs that we can potentially see in a child or in a youth. I think, so that first part on the physical signs, I think one thing that we could look out for as a possible indicator, a possible sign, is the fact that there are some physical symptoms that you may see in the individual. That person may have shortness of breath, they may be a bit more irritable, they may look a bit more tired, and I think in more serious cases where they are abusing vape with etomidate, so K-pots, as I think we all know, they could even be hallucinating, they could even be losing control of their physical body movement, right? So that's really in that space of physical indicators. Now, in terms of behavioral indicators, I think that's quite important as well. It is quite telling when a child has a sudden change in their behavior. So one of the things that I think we look out for in schools especially is whether a child has a change in mood. I think what we do see as an early sign is when a child has mood swings or suddenly there's a change in that child's behavior. The child is typically a very positive individual but suddenly has become a bit more moody. As a parent, you may want to look out for things. For example, the child has a change in circle of friends. The child used to be really close to this group of students, this group of friends, classmates in class, but now there's a different circle. Those are some possible early signs that's really looking at it from a behavioral point of view. On the third part, it's really about the environmental signs that you may spot, and that will be things like really seeing that the child, their clothes could smell different. You may notice that there's this sweet berry-like smell on their clothes. So some environmental factors like that as well. You may also notice certain changes in the environment at home. Maybe the child is a bit more secretive, they're hiding their bag. You may spot certain, previously you would not recognize certain wrappers or packaging. These are some early possible signs that parents could potentially look out for. But I did want to just caveat that there's no formulaic way of looking at this because the signs are really hard to tell sometimes. But I think looking at these in totality can give you a broad, good indication of what are some of the possible telltale signs. Yeah, so just wanted to touch on those three things.
Right. Dr. Fung, would you have anything else to add to that? Any telltale signs that you've seen in maybe some of the children that or youths that you've come across?
Well, sorry, yeah, you can hear me. No, I was going to say that, like in an addiction, if, when you first start, it may be easier to hide because you don't need a lot of it. But if you start to increase use, there will be all that secrecy that, we're talking about. And that's what vaping and nicotine addiction would result in. And of course, there's the issue of cost. They have to spend money to buy the vapes. I mean, it's not very expensive, but there's a price to it. So again, just wondering if where does the pocket money go to, for example? These might be some sort of telltale signs. I mean, I'll give you the personal example. I found a USB-like device in when I asked my wife, "What is this?" She said it was USB, right? It's a something that my son had left behind. But if you don't understand it, you're not sure, it could be a vape. Obviously, with the depending on which device and the kind of pods, you may see leftover pods in the dustbin and all that if they're not careful. And that's, by the way, the word K-pod is from the word ketamine, which was one of the original substances, another anesthetic agent placed into vapes. It's kind of stuck as that.
That's an interesting point, because I think some parents had asked also, vapes are disguised to look like everyday objects. So what are actually the common forms that parents should be aware of? And I think we spoke about this briefly before the panel. We said that it's not just about the objects that you look out for. It's really the whole accumulation of the behavioral changes. Do you also see sometimes they are more angsty, a little bit like they want to hide things, and do you see that as well? Right. So it's really that whole totality that we should be looking out for. Okay. And the question then is really, and this one is an interesting question. I thought I wanted to ask it. Is vaping without etomidate less harmful to the body than smoking cigarettes? This is something that I think some parents talk about. You tell me that vaping is bad. How bad is it? So maybe Dr. Fung.
I'll chip in here if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Because clearly it is. The harm of cigarettes is in the burning of the cigarette. So there are a lot of carcinogens that happen in that process. And that's the thing that's harmful in cigarette smoking. But it does also introduce nicotine, but at a much lower dose. What vaping does is pure nicotine at much higher doses, delivered directly into your lung surfaces, plus all the other chemicals which they add to it. And we do not know what. Etomidate is any substance that they put in. And because this is not regulated, it's not monitored, we don't know. And in the long run, we don't know what will happen to the lungs. We know that smoking in the long run, and I personally, I just lost my dad. He died at 93, but he could have lived longer. He used to smoke. Why did my dad smoke? At 93, he was born in an age where everybody smoked. Smoking was socially acceptable. Today, we know smoking is harmful. And in fact, we should try and ban it, but it's difficult because it's so deeply entrenched. Vaping is one of those potential social risks that we have. And this is not a moral panic. It's a real panic that we have to be thinking about. It is harmful. And I without any doubt, this is harmful.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to something else, which is probably something as a parent I really want to know. Why do children and teenagers vape? So maybe what is the psychology and the underlying causes as to why, why do you think youth do this? Maybe I start with Dr. Fung, just to ask you, what, based on your psychological background, what do you know? Why do they do it?
Well, that's a question that you can ask any of us. Why do people do anything? Well, because I see other people doing it. Like, why do you wear a particular piece of jewelry or a dress or a shirt? It's because it looks good on me. It's attractive. And what vape has done is that it made itself attractive. When it first came out, it was an electronic cigarette, and people said, "Well, that's just like a real cigarette." But it's the real cigarette that was attractive. Today, the vape is seen as a device that, if I have it and I use it, it might be like with my friends. And that social acceptability, the peer influence, particularly with adolescents, would be the first step for anything, and if in social media where they see popular people, influencers doing this, it may attract them to try. And if it's widely available, if there are links to get this vape, and because of the digital world that we live in, this accessibility plus its attractiveness, I think it draws the young people in.
So let me change that to the social side, because it's more the psychological side. But the social side, and that's where Ee-Lyn, probably you have the expertise for this. How then can parents actually empower their children to resist this social peer pressure?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think also to add on to what Dr. Daniel Fung mentioned, I think a lot of times, from our youth team, what the observation is that teens vape because they want a sense of belonging. because all my friends or the friend group that I'm hanging out with is vaping, and so they feel that, if I want to feel belong, I feel there's a group I belong to, and so there's something they do. So sense of belonging is one, and I think they also feel like there's a curiosity to know why, what is it about? Earlier on someone asked me, some you say, I want to try everything, right? So in that situation, then the question that you ask, what can parents do? Yeah. Right? I think one of the things that we noted that children who are more resilient, not that everyone isn't, but everyone has a different level of resilient factors. And one of the resilient factors we have observed is that teenagers who generally have good self-esteem, confidence, they know their goals in life, what they want to achieve, tendency they have more pro-social behaviors and attitudes and skills. And so they are able to resist some of these temptations or pressure that they experience. So I'll just give an example, like, I hear of teenagers who say, whom I asked, I said, have you thought of vaping? I said, yeah, my friends vape. So have you thought of it? And they said, no. And one of the reasons is because I have goals in my life that I want to achieve. For example, I want to excel in sports. And if I vape, it damages or affects my lungs, and so I will not perform as well as I would want to. So I think it's instead of thinking of how can we encourage them to desist it, I think let's frame it differently. Let's look at what are your goals and aspirations. What do you want to achieve in your life? What do you hope to accomplish? And then when we can come from a different lens or different frame of reference, I think we help teens realize that, hey, I have, my life ahead of me. There are things that I want to accomplish, goals that I want to accomplish in my life. And so this allows them to adopt more pro-social behaviors and activities. And so that's one of the main factors that we found that is helpful for parents to explore that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here because I have an eye-rolling teenager at home.
Yes.
So I will say this. I sometimes feel that the fight against peer pressure is tough. Right? I mean, I can go back and say, you want to be a good sportsman, let's do this. But if, let's say, in school, he goes around and he feels that, hey, my friends smoke, they vape and they're cool. What are some possible specific strategies that I can perhaps move towards or at least take up to encourage him? Because I almost feel like it's me versus his cool friends and the uncool old mom versus the cool friends.
Yes.
So what can I do,
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very good question. I think one of the things that we realize that, when we communicate with teens, we don't want to assume or presume. So one of the things that I found is useful, I asked them, so how many friend groups do you have? How important is this friend group to you? So I'm sure teenagers have many friend groups. You have friends from class, from CCA, from sports, from outside. There are people that you hang out in the communities centers or different community areas. So the question and the curiosity I will have as a mom is to ask them this question: how important is this friend group? Because youth have many types of friends, and they may view them different in terms of closeness. Friends that they look up to, they respect, they admire, or perhaps they hang out more often with. Then the propensity to not adopting some of these habits may be higher. But before we jump and say, I gotta protect them, don't hang out with them. But I think the question is how close are you with these friends? On a scale of 1 to 5, how important are these friends to you? And sometimes you realize they say, actually, Mom, I'm not very close with them. Maybe I'll give them a 1 or 2, right? I only see them like once a week or once every 2 weeks. But those that I really hang out with, the friends that really got my back, they're really there for me, and then, I'll explore more. So I think the key here for parents is we don't want to presume or assume. We want to be curious, right? I mean, if you see them rolling eyes, which is very common, so what I usually encourage parents to do is just observe. Hey, I see you rolling your eyes. I'm just wondering, what do you think about what I just said? Right? It sounds like you have a different way of thinking and different thoughts about that. Would you like to share more? Tell me more. So one of my favorite word, 3-letter word, just remember this: tell me more. Very simple, but when you ask the teenagers to say, tell me more, I think that's where you really uncover what are their thinking, their feelings, and how important is this friendship. And then you can make an assessment or in terms of risk factors, whether they'll pick up vaping or they won't pick up vaping. So, and then you can look at other protective factors as well. I hope that's useful.
Yeah, I think so. I think, when Dr. Fung shared your story about how your son's girlfriend saved him from it, my first thought was, okay, I need to go and vet the girlfriend in future because that's quite an important factor.
I was gonna add one more point,
Yes, please
which is this idea that vaping is a stress reliever, because I think it is unfortunate that our children feel that they are very stressed and that they need something to relieve the stress. So there are adaptive ways of relieving stress, and there are maladaptive ones. Vaping is not only maladaptive, it's harmful. So I think the other thing is to offer them options. I mean, there could be other things, I suppose. People will say, oh, what about video gaming? Maybe that will take my stress. Or going out and playing sports and doing other things, which is less harmful, but physically useful. For example, exercise. If you were to run, you can be addicted to running because it does do something to your reward mechanisms, and that's not a bad thing. At least for a young person, is actually important to have activity. So those are some things that you can sort of talk about. But I take that point. It's very difficult to suggest things to children, and normally your children will roll their eyes at whatever you say, unless you share it as a personal experience. So if you had an experience as a parent against some of the bad habits of your time, it could be cigarettes. How did you take your first puff, or didn't, or tried to resist it, and what happened? And even if you were, addicted to it, how did you stop? Those would be great experiences to share if you had them. And I think that's some examples that I would suggest. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, because I think sometimes parents can tell stories. I remember my teenage kids will always tell me, stop telling me what to do. But if I tell them I made this mistake, they love to hear that. Oh, mommy, you made a mistake before what? And then you tell the story, right? Or I tell them about a different case or something like that. So maybe relating a story that will be a one way to connect with them. Telling them about the side effects of vaping through, sharing a story of someone that you know of or you've seen. Like nowadays there's always videos of people who have, obviously have been vaping and have gotten themselves into trouble. It's a good idea to show them as well, right?
Yeah. And just to add to that, sometimes like what Dr. Fang said, and you mentioned, right? Sometimes you may want to ask the kids, so your friends vape, but you didn't. Wow, tell me what made you not join them?
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised at what they will say.
Yeah.
Because you realize that actually they can articulate and tell you why they're not vaping. Like, I can just say, like, when I asked my son, I asked, why didn't you vape? He said, well, I don't think I need to join them. And it's something that I'm not curious about, or maybe I'm not interested in. So sometimes, you don't assume that, just because their friends vape, they may be at risk of vaping. But maybe ask them, so what stopped you? What kept you away from vapes? And that's where you find the strength in the child, you find the protective factors they already have, the resilience that they possess, and you need to affirm that. And I can say something like, I'm so proud of you. The fact that you chose not to join your friends in vaping, but you know where you stand, what you believe in, and you held your ground. Well done, I'm so proud of you. And when you say that, it straight away their self-esteem goes up another notch, right? And then they will have that different lens to see themselves that actually I'm capable, I'm strong, I can resist temptation. Yeah.
Yes, it's really like the communication that you have with your child. I would like to move to the next topic, which is about engaging our children. So far, I think we've been talking about the parents' engagement. And I think I'm going to ask the million-dollar question here, because I see a lot of parents ask the same questions. What are some measures that schools have taken to address vaping? So, yes. Oh.
Thanks, Sher-Li, for that question, and thanks to the parents who asked that as well. I think when it comes to looking at school-based measures and how we support children in this, it is helpful to really take a step back and look at it both from the upstream and downstream point of view. When it comes to vaping or any sort of behavioral issues that our students need to manage, that's generally the kind of framing that we look at, both the upstream as well as downstream. I think typically for vaping, we tend to focus a lot on the consequences, what corrective actions need to be taken. but looking at it a bit more holistically, both from the upstream preventative type of steps as well as the downstream supportive corrective measures, I think that can be very helpful. So I'll offer that as a frame for our parents to think about school-based measures. But with that as the backdrop, I'll touch a bit on both. On upstream measures, schools place a lot of emphasis on preventive drug education. So even before vaping became a thing, we've always had in our character and citizenship education, our PE lessons, our science lessons, there were always messages about how it's important to not engage in drug taking, it's important to lead healthy lifestyles. More recently, of course, we've updated our curriculum to include information about vapes and some of the harmful chemicals that can be found in them. So that's really on the upstream curriculum part of it. But I think as we all know, vaping is relatively new, and vaping with etomidate is something that really has taken our society by storm quite recently. So schools, supported by our ministry, we've really ramped up efforts to engage our students. We've conducted assembly talks, we've conducted engagements with our students, where we've been quite open and upfront in talking about the harmful effects of vape, what are some potential strategies that you can use to manage this. So that's really on the upstream part, right? This whole set of strategies on preventing and educating, and generally just increasing the awareness of our kids in school. On the downstream part, there are a few parts to it. I think the first bit is really about enforcement. We were talking a bit about that just now, right? The early signs and how to spot vaping, and it's not easy. But what we have been doing in schools is really sharing with teachers, getting them to be aware of what are some of the telltale signs. We've also shared with students in general what they can look out for, so that if they know that a friend is vaping, they can then report it to the school. So there are very significant efforts to step up enforcement. And I saw that there was a question about bag checks and toilet checks. We do employ such strategies in school, but I did want to make a broader point to the parents here that schools are meant to be a safe and inviting and conducive place. I just wanted to assure everyone that we certainly have not swung to the other extreme of doing mass bag checks and getting students to fall in line, and check all these things. We are quite measured and intentional with how we employ such strategies. If, let's say, a student is a known vape abuser, we will possibly do a bag check, but we do it with respect, we do it with dignity, we do it in private, we do it discreetly. Right? So those are some of the strategies that we use when it comes to heightening enforcement. Toilet checks, we do that as well. But I was just sharing with Sher-Li and Ee-Lyn before the talk today that teachers are very seldom at their desks in schools, right? We're always walking around, going about the classrooms. If it's not lessons, we're always walking around the school just to get a sense of what our kids are doing, whether it's visiting them in the canteen or visiting them in the classrooms. And we generally do periodic spot checks of the toilet just to make sure that the kids are behaving themselves. Teachers, with the previous point that I mentioned, with that heightened awareness of what vapes could smell like, things to look out for, we do sometimes check toilets as well. But it's not something that we approach in a formulaic, over-structured way to say that at this time we will do checks. So it's really moving in that right direction just to make sure that enforcement is generally stepped up. So that's on enforcement. I think it is worth mentioning that schools have taken a very serious stance against vaping. As of 1st September, we made it very clear to the students that vaping has always been illegal in Singapore, but as of 1st September, it's nationwide, right? We are tightening measures. So in tandem with what is being done at the national level, with the increase in fines, and increase steps like mandatory supervision, rehabilitation. What we're doing in schools is we have tightened our school-based disciplinary measures as well. So we did communicate to the students the various sets of disciplinary consequences that you could face if you're found to be abusing vape, or if you're abusing vape with etomidate. And the way it generally works is we share with them that they would be subjected to some sort of variation between disciplinary consequences like detention, suspension, and for boys, we will potentially cane them. and we will adjust the conduct grade of students if they are found abusing these substances. Now, generally, the tiering of it is that it gets more and more serious. The number of days of detention and suspension increases as we go from a first-time offender to second-time offender to third-time offender. So that's something that we do. We do that in a very balanced and measured way. The intention is not to frighten the kids, but it's to really signal that vaping is a serious issue, as Dr. Fung and all the panelists have mentioned. Vaping is serious. You're harming yourself, and you really need to take this seriously. So that's a very symbolic action that schools take in order to send that very clear signal. The last part of the downstream measures is really more of the rehabilitative support. And I think that's important, right? Because we are a school, we are there to care for our students. We put in place rehabilitative measures like counseling our students. That is something we take very, very seriously. And one part that makes me very proud to be an educator is that when we counsel a student who has abused vape, we will be very upfront in saying that we're not judging you as an individual, right? We're judging the action. And we are here to really help you correct the action. And we're not here to judge your morality or who you are as a person. And I think that links back to what Ee-Lyn was mentioning earlier about having open conversations.
Yeah.
The phrase we use in my school at least is, let's be curious before we be furious. And I think that's a good guiding philosophy that all of us can take as we manage this very serious issue.
That's a really good point, that, really, you're not a bad child because you're vaping. We understand that. It's because you've picked up a bad habit and we're trying to curb the habit. I think that's what we're on. So with that in mind, Dr. Fung, you can also jump in if you want to. How do you think then parents can actually partner the schools to protect and support their children? Dr. Fung or Ee-Lyn, anyone?
I was going to reinforce Ee-Lyn's point.
Yes.
Ee-Lyn talked about some techniques already about talking, because there was a question: what if your child threw out a fuss? And indeed, I think if you are going to fight with a child, it's not going to solve the problem. So Ashraf talked about this. We need to move right from a kind of a retributive approach to a restorative approach. And what is a restorative approach? It means that you try and understand context. If you say you must quit vaping, it's bad for you. In a technique called motivational interviewing, you are saying, well, what is it about vaping that you enjoy, and what worries you about it? Are you concerned about anything at all? Because children will understand that the facts are out there. So the empathy, the allowing them to allowing them to say, okay, I'm actually in a quandary. I want to do this because my peer pressure, because it's attractive, but at the same time I'm a bit concerned, and I know about the problems. The discrepancy needs to be raised up, and then after that, instead of arguing, try to think about what reframing is needed, or what kind of a way to deal with this. Maybe start to question, and this actually flows naturally into what we call a stage of change, right? It's no use trying to force the child to change if they don't want to. So there was one question that says, can I make them go for quit vape, right? And actually, if you can bring a cow to drink at the pond, but they won't drink, right? You can't force the cow or whichever animal, including your young teenagers. So you got to get them to contemplate and think about, from I don't have a problem to maybe I vaping too much, or maybe some of the stuff that I'm vaping, I see my friends have problems and I'm worried about it, right? And then getting them ready to change, and then maybe say have a date. I have a friend. It's an old friend of mine. She is a psychologist, and she smokes. She smokes so much that I walked up to her and said, "Look, I think you smoke too much. It's dangerous." And we had this conversation, and she was waiting for me to come and ask her, because it gave her permission to say, "Okay, I'm going to try. For your sake, Daniel, I'm going to try." And I think if you start to find them into this model of change, you'll be able to help them along. It's much easier than if they were sort of trying to argue with you, or even worse, they're fighting with you.
Yeah, I think that's a very good, actually that leads me to my next question. It's the same, probably the same answer, but I'm sure Ee-Lyn has something to add to it. So I think when this first came up, one of the things as a parent of teenagers, I thought, how can I talk about this without causing friction at home? Because, anything causes friction as a teenager. You can just wake up on the wrong day and it's a bad day, right? But this is such an important topic. And I think what Dr. Fung said is very interesting, because I find that as a mom, there's a lot of emotional attachment and fear. That's why when we get almost like negative, disciplinary, and in our tone, it's from a place of fear. But because of that, it makes the open communication very tough with my teenager. So what would you advise for me so that this is an open communication that allows, and I think Dr. Fung mentioned some things about it, and also I will always remember the good girlfriend, and I'll still look for that. But what else can I do?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. Sher, I think when I was thinking about this, I think like you mentioned, you hit the nail on the head. You said fear. A lot of times parents respond out of fear. And when fear happens, the immediate reaction is anger.
Yes.
Right? So parents are worried, parents are fearful, parents are feel lost and helpless. And so the immediate reaction is anger. And when we react in anger, the first thing that comes out is stop vaping. Why you do this? I'm grounding you. I'm going to report you. And you threaten them.
Correct.
So the moment you threaten the child, or you nag, or you begin to become very like attack mode, right? What is the child going to do? What's the first thing all of us would do?
Defend.
We'll be defensive, isn't it? So that's a very natural human reaction. But I like what Sher-Li mentioned. You mentioned that the underlying cause of, if you look at the iceberg, I like to teach this to parents and couples, right? If you look at the iceberg, on top you see the iceberg and there's anger. But underneath the iceberg, you see a lot of primary emotions like fears, anxiety, helpless, loss. And if parents can first understand by staying calm, so I'm going to give you 5 simple C's, okay? Singaporeans like 5 C's, so I have 5 C's here for you today, so you can remember. So the first C is actually stay calm. Now, how do you stay calm? Is it just doing deep breathing exercises or grounding exercise? I think the first thing we can do to stay calm is really to attend to yourself first. Ask yourself, how am I feeling? I'm feeling worried, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling fearful. The second thing you can do is when you communicate with your teen, instead of saying, stop doing this, you can start by saying, I'm worried. I'm worried when I see that there are some changes in maybe certain behaviors or, certain things that's happening. I'm worried. So when you say, I'm worried, is there any you inside? Does it sound defensive to you?
No.
It doesn't, right? So when you are calm, first identify how you're feeling, and then use I statements, say, I'm worried. Okay, and the second thing is be curious. We talk about this at length. Being curious means being understanding. Being curious to say, what made you decide to vape? I'm just curious to find out, what do you think about that? Or if your child is not vaping, but you're worried that they may pick up vaping, you may ask that, recently, you may say something like, recently, I hear there's a lot of conversation about vaping. I'm just wondering, what do you think about that? So you start off like having a neutral discussion, right? And then whatever they say, you remember, you got to stay calm, right? Okay, so that's something that parents can do, because teenagers will shut off and not communicate with parents if they don't feel they're psychologically safe. Well, to be a psychologically safe space, it means that teenagers don't feel judged, they don't feel rejected or criticized. So the moment teenagers feel judged, rejected, or being criticized, they can become very defensive. That's where all the actions you see, like eye rolling, storm off, ignore you, lock themselves in the room, all these behaviors will happen. So I think that's why, it's good for us to be curious. Okay, don't assume, but ask questions. And then the third C is actually to communicate and connect with them. Very often parents think, I need to correct the behavior. But before correction, you need to connect. Because if you don't connect with the child or your teenager before you correct them, what happens is they will resist you. They will not listen to you. They will shut down. Because that is a natural human defensive reaction. So what we want to do is to connect with them. And how do you connect with them is by communicating. So now the questions that parents may ask is, well, how do I communicate with them, right? So you can ask things like, what made you decide to vape? I'm just curious. You know what? I'm just curious why, don't ask why, but ask what. What made you decide to pick it up and try? I'm just wanting to understand that. And then like what Sher-Li said, normalize it by talking about your own experiences when you were growing up, right? And then, and when teens share, I know parents, it's very easy to get very upset easily, right? You always start thinking of what you're going to reply, what you're going to say next. But one of the things that I find that's useful that we coach parents is to just paraphrase what the teenagers said. I think when you paraphrase what teens say, you're saying, oh, I'm hearing that you are saying this. And the reason why, what made you do that is because you feel you want to belong to this friend group. So when you hear that, teens begin to realize that, hey, my parents understand what I said, right? So there's understanding there. And, if your child vapes because they say, I don't have friends, and the friends that I hang out with vape, so I just join them because I want to have some friends, right? So what I would do as parents, I would encourage parents to do is to have empathy. Yeah. Imagine if you're in the shoes of your teenager who says that the only friends that I have are friends who vape. Now, how would that be? I would say something, wow, it must be very hard. I can't imagine what it must have felt like. When you know that vaping is wrong, but yet because you want to belong to this friend group, you feel there's a need and a push to vape. It must be hard. I can understand that. So I have empathy, and that's all these you realize are ways to connect with your teenager. And when you connect with them, this is where you can consider, the fourth C is actually to look at how do you consider options. We have teenagers, parents ask, should I just tell them to join Quit Vape, call helpline, maybe I should just refer them. But instead of telling them, offering a solution, consider their opinions. We have to remember that teenage years are a year of developmental changes. What are the teenagers' needs? What I think maybe the needs will be like self-actualization. Yeah. They want to feel competent, sense of belonging. They want to feel that I'm capable,
There's
I'm
independence,
competent.
right?
Yes.
It's almost like they're trying to grow up.
Yes, you're right.
That's why, back to my point earlier on, they're not a bad person. They've made a bad choice. And I think we're trying to establish that more than anything else. It's so interesting that you brought this up because obviously we're here talking about vaping, but if you think about it, it could have been any other bad habit that needs that open communication. But open communication can be very hard because it goes into very deep-seated communication challenges that might have been there from a long time ago. So in situations where it's not immediate, right? Because I love all the, I'm going to practice that, by the way, some of the C's that you mentioned. But these things take time. Yes. So if, let's say, as a parent, I'm really worried because vaping is such a dangerous thing and it started already, and I'm in a rush to say, I want to make sure that let's nip it in the bud. What else would you suggest for me to speed this along? Because I almost feel like, at least I can speak for myself, it will take me a while for me to reach that stage where my teenager is listening to me to make that change, right? So is there anything you think we can do that can speed up that a little bit?
Yes, so in our program, we offer the Triple P program. Actually, I'm happy to share more. So under the Triple P framework, they actually share about a problem-solving step. Now, instead of telling the teenager or your child what to do, invite them to co-create a solution together. Yeah. Because when you invite them to co-create a solution, you get buy-in. Because they know that it's not something mommy or daddy tell me to do, but it's something that I was part of the decision-making process. So we use a very simple acronym called STEP. So it's STEP, right? It's quite easy to remember. So S stands for state the problem. So the problem can be simply as saying that mommy is worried that you are vaping, and I'm worried about the impact on your health, right? So that's the state the problem. Now, STT is think of solution. Ask them, what do you think would be some good solutions to this, this thing that we're experiencing now as a family? What do you think, maybe can you think of like 2 solutions? What can we do to maybe quickly stop this so that before it gets, it affects your health and it cause addiction? So think of solution, ask them to list maybe option 1, option 2. Then after T, you can go to E. E stands for evaluate the options. So ask the teenager to think, oh, you suggested maybe I can stop, maybe I vape once a week, okay, maybe option A. Option B is I stop completely. Option C is I continue, right? So you ask them, so if both all these three options, what are the pros and cons? Right? What's the long-term implication? What is the immediate what are some pros and cons, good and bad? And then after that, ask them to rate at a scale of 1 to 5. What do you think of that as an option? So that's E, and then P, you can put it into action. Let's try that. So when you go that framework, I use this framework that parents can use to co-create solutions with their teenagers. And and when you co-create that, oftentimes teens are more willing to try it because the suggestion was something that you did with the teenager.
In a way, accountability.
Yes, that's right.
Ashraf, you have anything you want to add on from an educator point of view as well?
Sure. So just wanted to add a few points, but I just wanted to say that I think Ee-Lyn has given us a lot of good handles on how to conduct an open conversation. And I mean, being an educator, I can say that it's not easy to have an open conversation with a youth. There's sometimes quite a fair bit of resistance that we can face. And I think at home, parents, you find that even more challenging because sometimes when our youth go home, they put up a wall, there's that distance sometimes. So I think those handles were really, really helpful. I just had 2 quick points that I wanted to add on. And the first was to really encourage all of us to exercise some patience when it comes to conversations with our kids. I have a very young son at home. He's 3 years old. And I find myself so often getting very impatient with him. I'm not talking to him about vaping, of course, right? Because he's too young. But I find that there's so many instances that we face as parents where our patience is tested. And Sher-Li raised that good point that we want actions or strategies which can yield results quickly. And I think that's fine, right? I think we should always aspire for that. But I would encourage us to take a long-term mindset when it comes to conversations with our youth. It takes time, right? It takes time for them to open up. So the first time you try the S in that framework, they may not open up. You try those questions that Ee-Lyn shared, they may not respond. It may not be the right time. You may want to revisit that later on. So just that point about patience and looking at it from a long-term point of view. The second thing is to really suggest that there would be value in going deep into the root cause of why the child is vaping. My own experience as an educator is that there's a whole range of reasons for why an individual vapes. It could be personal factors, which I think Dr. Fung alluded to earlier, things like stress, they're feeling stress or they're facing certain emotions. It could be stresses because of friendship issues, it could be stress associated with exams, and then they turn to
almost
vapes
like escapism
as a form of escape, right? So that could be a reason. It could be social factors, right? We talked a lot about peer influence. It could even be environmental factors, that they're on their phone, accessing Telegram where certain targeted marketing is being pushed out to them. And I think the conversation with your child would have a slightly different texture and nuance depending on that specific root cause. So I would say, back to that earlier point that I made, to really be curious, find out more, ask open questions just to get them to open up and to really get a good handle on what is the underlying reason here. Sometimes as parents, we go in with our own assumptions that, oh yeah, you're vaping because you've been influenced by your friends. Or you're doing it because you're bored, right? A lot of that is us jumping to conclusions. And I think it's important to dig deep and really try and understand what are some of the underlying causes.
Yeah, I always joke about it that sometimes as parents, we've forgotten what it's like when we were teenagers. And then we were trying to find our own voice, having our own thoughts, right? And then our parents would nag us and be like, So it's in a way it's that same thing that's happening, but it's our kids who are happening. Okay, I have one question.
I was just going to add to that. I think we should also be very careful about trying to make them do certain things in a kind of forceful manner, even in this instance. I mean, I take the example of parents who come to say and see me and say, look, my child is going out with this person and I'm not happy with that. I want to stop them. How can I stop them quickly? Your question about how do you do this quickly and rapidly, stop all communication, take off the phone and delete all the pictures or whatever and the numbers And what happens with that is that it actually drives them even more into it.
Yeah, Romeo and Juliet
So,
style.
yeah. So I would actually don't overreact when you find out, and better still, take it as an opportunity to discuss. It's like when you see a sex scene on TV and or something, and you are a young child, don't stop suddenly and then turn off everything and then try to explain it. Explain it in context. I think that's very important. Opportunities for teaching this is quite critical. And it could be a story that you see on in the newspaper nowadays. There's lots of stories, but personal experiences can be opportunities for you to have discussions. And I love Ashraf's point about patience, because we need to have spend time with our children. I know people want to talk about quality time, and honestly, you need to spend time. And as they grow up, you need to give them that space, because in an adolescent, as unlike kids, and vaping stops in between this. You have young children, early preteens, and then you have adolescents. There is a difference. With preteens, you can do some of the more forceful things and enforce the actions, because they're still not teenagers yet. When they're teenagers, they want to learn to make their own decisions. So that is quite important. And if we don't allow them to make those decisions, they're likely to go down that path that you most not want them to.
Almost like a defiant mode, right? And it makes sense if you're fighting for independence. Of course, yeah.
Yeah, and I just had a quick point to add on to what Dr. Fung just said. One trick that we use in school, or it's not really a trick, but it's a strategy that teachers use, is to practice wait time. When you ask a question to a student, a lot of us will naturally face the internal impatience of, why aren't you answering me, right? I've asked you a question, I need an answer, right? It's quite transactional. It's very normal, it's human nature to want an immediate response. But one thing that we emphasize a lot in schools, and this goes beyond vaping, right? It's how we teach, how we interact with our students. We focus a lot on wait time. How are you feeling? And really just to be comfortable with the silence and to be okay with that. And I think that's a powerful tool to use in our conversations with our children. Give them the space to think about the question that you've asked, be comfortable with the silence, and practice wait time. Yeah, that's a practical tip that I think we can all try.
Yeah, and sometimes the wait time can be longer than just a few seconds.
Yes, it can be quite long.
It can be quite long. So I can just share from experience. I think many parents will agree with me. Sometimes we ask a question, they'll be quiet, and they'll be very, very quiet, and they're thinking, how long should I wait? Okay, I see some parents smiling at me.
Sometimes the next day, then they reply. I had that before.
So what I would do sometimes, at least for my teenager, I say, it sounds like you're not prepared to talk about it now. It sounds like you need more time to think about it. Why not like that? We check in another time. When you are ready again, just let me know you like to talk about it. Or if not, I'll come and ask you again maybe tomorrow or the day after. Right? So I think we have to give them a bit of space, a bit of time. Yeah, and that's, I think, really helpful. Yeah.
I'll turn back to vaping again, because I think a lot of what you all have mentioned is obviously parenting, and I agree with that. But more pertinently, right? If let's say we do catch, maybe I ask Ashraf this question: where or who can students turn to for help if they need support in addressing this issue? Because obviously the home front is one area, but even if they were not able to find that in the home front, where else can we direct them to?
Okay, thanks for that question. I think it's an important question, because I mentioned earlier that we do place a lot of emphasis on rehabilitative support for a youth who has been caught vaping, and I think that's important, right? That we do give them the support. One thing that we emphasize to our students, and this came out very strongly when we engaged them in these recent few months on the situation about vaping, is we were very upfront to say that if you are vaping and you would like to stop, please step forward. Please step forward and know that you won't face any penalties. And I think that's really a wonderful position that not just schools has taken, but the entire government, right? We have been quite clear in saying that if you step forward voluntarily and you sign up for a program and seek help, you will not face penalties for doing so. Of course, you do have to abide by the fact that you should stop vaping from that point of stepping forward. But I think that that's a really nice balanced stance that we're taking. We, as a nation, as a community, we're saying it's a big problem that we're having. We're coming down very harsh on the penalties, but we're also taking this nurturing, rehabilitative stance as well. So that's one thing that we mentioned to our students, step forward. What typically happens there in a school setting is we will give them counseling support. But more often than not, schools are very cognizant of the fact that we're not the experts in providing support for addictions or managing that. So we do share with our students the various avenues that they can seek help from, the Quit Vape program, various sorts of support from national agencies. We have HPB Quit Line, we have NAMS, the National Addiction Management Service, we have We Care Community Services. SANA also offers support for youth who step forward and who need help. We have Tai Hua Kwan Moral Charities, we have Fair Community Services. I feel there's really this notion of no wrong door policy. Just come forward and help will be provided to you. And I think that's an important stance to take. That's what schools do. When a student steps forward, we will work with an external agency to provide that kind of cessation support so that the child receives the counseling support, the monitoring, and that rehabilitation.
Yeah. What about Ee-Lyn?
Yeah, I think maybe it's a good opportunity to talk about, I think when we first started, Ashraf mentioned about how it takes a whole community. I think to really support every family, it takes a whole community to support, not just the teenagers. So at Fei Yue, what we offer is that our Youth Go program, we offer a different program that is sports related to support youth. If you're interested, you can just visit Fei Yue Youth Go at fycs.org. So what our youth program does is we have different orders of change. So the first order change, we're looking at behavioral change. So that's done through casework management and counseling the youth. Now the second order change that we look at is identity change, where the youth begin to realize that I don't need to vape to feel good about myself. So they say they can begin to have identity change, and then the third order change is where the community comes in to say that, wow, you are a young person, a youth who has, have aspirations and these hopes and dreams for your future. So we look at that program, and so our Youth Go program does offer this as well. I think not just for support for the youth, but I think for the parents. I think parents need support too, isn't it? I think many of you here, sitting here and tuning in are parents. And I think, you can also always visit the Families for Life website. There are 10 different service agencies providing triple P all across Singapore. Every school, there is a social work agency that offers triple P programs to support parents. And we offer like one-to-one coaching session. They are private, confidential. They are also, that we are here to support parents as well. So don't journey alone. Reach out to us and we are happy to support you as well.
I just want to make a quick plug for what Ee-Lyn has just shared. So my school is on the triple P parenting program, and we receive raving reviews from the parents that the content is so rich, so practical, so actionable as well. So I would highly encourage you to visit the website and to explore signing up for some of these programs. It goes beyond just vaping. I think parenting in itself, in its entirety, is such a difficult job, right? It's a full-time job for all of us. And it is important for us to know that we're not alone. There's a wealth of information and resources and support out there.
Yeah, I think that's really something I gather that really, of course we talk about vaping, but the bigger picture here is also the whole parenting support that we need to provide to our youths in order for us to tackle this problem. Dr. Fung, you have anything you want to add about where, what other avenues that parents or youths can seek help at?
I think the most important thing around this is you need to get the youth ready to seek help. That's the part that I'm most concerned about. Without that, parents can find all the resources, and there are several social service agencies that can support. But I think you need to engage the youth. This is why I think, although we're talking about parenting, I think it's important.
Yeah.
Vaping is one of the social ills, but there are many others.
Yeah.
And amongst our young people, there is a need to sort of engage them in their development, and parents have a role to play. The social service agencies, if I'm not mistaken, Fei Yue, Touch, and is it Sana and We Care, are the ones that are, sort of, Sana and We Care in particular are addiction-based social service agencies. But there are lots of social service, including family service centers, who you can approach. Schools, you have counselors. I think those approaches could be one way to sort of, if you identify the problem and you are worried that the first time you raised it with your child, they got really furious. But having said that, there was two questions that I saw in the chat, which I think hasn't been uplifted because it didn't get enough votes. Questions like, if the child says, "Can I cut down?" That's not a bad idea. It's like cigarette smoking. If you cut down, it is a good start. And if they're willing to say that, you should follow up and again have that patience to work with them and say, okay, can we monitor this together? I don't think we should, just because it's illegal, you would then take a very, sort of
Didactic.
punitive
Yeah.
approach. Yeah, at home. I think we need to think about how to engage. It is I see it as an opportunity for you as a parent to be engaged with your youth, to find time and spend time with them, knowing full well the information about vaping being a bad thing. How can you now engage your child to help them? And that process starts with the family. I mean, yeah, we can refer. You can go and see the psychiatrist, but does that solve the problem up front immediately? That you don't have good communication, that the connection with the child is a problem, and then you are not able to consider all these options that are available to you. So I would still want the parents to be very involved. In fact, sometimes referring to professional agencies, almost like I wash my hands of it. Now I give it to the school to take
Yeah,
care of it.
like a
I give it to the
handover.
social
Yeah.
agency,
Yeah.
and then but you know what? It's also your responsibility, and we can do it together. We can help you be better with your child.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very valid point because I don't think it's about turning to external agencies. At the end of the day, as a parent, we still have a part to play. I do want to ask this question, and because it's surfaced a few times, and I think it's a very valid question. What if my child wants to try vaping just for fun? Just curious. I want to try one time. You tell me to be curious, right? I am curious about it. So what could be a possible response I give if my child tells me that? And knowing my child, very possibly that might be something brought up. Yeah. Anyone? I can't say no because they run away, right? So what perhaps can I say?
I think there are some things that we can try, and I've never done, sort of jumping off the tall hill into the water or bungee jumping. There is a certain amount of risk, but it's not that significant. But certain things, I think, risk is the main factor. So I wouldn't say, okay, I want to try cigarette smoking, right? And I say, yeah, why not? I'd be careful about some of these risks. So vaping has a potential risk. Trying it may make you get addicted. So I would not advise doing it. Can we try something else that you haven't done before? But have that conversation.
Because
So
the
some things
risk.
are very risky. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, cannabis.
Yeah.
I just go to Thailand or whatever. You can
Yeah.
try, but I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah,
it.
you can get hooked with one try.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think while there's a technical aspect to this question, how would you respond? I feel underlying it, there's actually very strong reason to celebrate this question, because if your teenage child is willing to come to you and ask, should I try vaping? The fact is that you have a very good relationship where your child feels safe enough to come up to you and ask a question like that. So I think just to cycle back to what Ee-Lyn mentioned earlier about not responding in anger, being open, in a way thanking them for coming forward with such a question, but then being very real about the harms of vaping. My own experience is that I think youth tend to overestimate the short-term benefits of vaping, the high that they get, the escapism that we talked about, but they tend to underestimate the long-term costs associated with vaping, the harm that it actually does to them. And I think when you share data, you share information, you share personal anecdotes, they can become more aware of that and bridge that gap.
Yeah. So again, it's back to storytelling, telling them about real cases.
Yeah, I did want to take one of the
Sure, please
questions
go ahead, yeah.
from the pigeonhole about whether the stricter surveillance and disciplinary consequences in secondary and IHLs, does it also apply to primary schools?
The tweens, yeah. Because that's at age 11 to
Yes,
12.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just very happy to share that whatever I mentioned earlier about upstream and downstream measures, tightening of measures, stiffer consequences, that's nationwide across the general education sector. So primary schools, secondary schools, JC, Millennium Institute, we've rolled that out. And we've been very upfront with the kids to explain that that's because we take a very strict stance against vaping. I think it's also worth mentioning that schools have been given some level of autonomy to add on additional consequences which schools feel are commensurate or appropriate with what they're doing in school. So for example, a kid who is caught vaping could potentially be barred from an overseas trip. They may be given additional consequences like that. Perhaps maybe a student leadership role may be removed. The reason why some of these additional consequences are there is because we all know that there's the technical part of managing the vaping, but there's also the fact that if you're a student leader, if you're participating in an overseas trip, there's a strong signaling effect that you are a student who is representing the school. Right? So it's also to send that strong symbolic signal to our students that this is serious. Right? If you do that, there are consequences. But as I mentioned earlier, there's a strong focus on being balanced in our approach as well. We will support them, we will counsel them, we will guide them.
I want to go back to this point I think you mentioned earlier, which I thought was a very valid point. One of the steps that the school takes isn't just about discipline. It's really more about helping the child overcome that, right? And I think if they come forward, the parents come forward with the child to say, Principal Ashraf, I'm having this problem. My daughter is vaping. The first action, because there was a question about should I call the police, right? But not so much calling the police, but approaching the school and taking that idea of restoring rather than
exactly
right. Yeah,
exactly, and that's very congruent with what I mentioned earlier about how if you step forward and you're willing to work with the school or with any sort of social agency to really quit that habit. I think the stance that we're taking is a very open stance. Come step forward, we're here to help you.
It's not punishment first, right? I think as parents we want to know that, because I do know that sometimes parents may say, look, if I do this, his whole future is destroyed. I come forward, everybody knows it's gone. But what I'm hearing now is it's not. It's actually, we're going to try to restore it first and help you get back on track. There's no punishment at the beginning, right? If you step forward, obviously, but if I catch it in your back, that's a different story, right? Yeah. It sounds like how we run it at home as well. So, all good. Yeah, but okay, I think that's a very valid point. Now, another question that I have, which was also here, what if my child is not the one vaping, but he sees his friends vaping and they are struggling with this because they know it's not right? What do they do? You know, in Chinese we call it 包兜 them. Do we? What should they do? What would you advise?
So I did see that question on whether we should encourage our children to whistleblow on their friends.
Correct.
And I think that's a very valid question because friendships are important to our kids in school, right? That's their whole world when they are in a school. The friendships that they have with their friends, their CCA mates, it means so much to them. The way I've kind of managed it in my own school is to get the kids to reframe that it's less about pautoing your friend or whistleblowing, but rather, if you truly care for this friend, sharing with the school, informing a trusted adult is an important step in really taking care of this person's well-being. Right, and I think when I talk to my students in my school, when I go for my walkabouts and I chat with them, a lot of them share that I think in the early days, they were not sure of whether they should do that because there was not enough information out there about the harms of vaping. But I think the more we've come out as a society with all the media articles, with school engagement talks, with parents at home, like all of you, talking and educating our children on the harms of it, I do think that there is a tipping point where our kids do see the value in stepping forward, because it's not about that negative view of being a whistleblower, but I'm doing this because I truly care for my friend. One technical point, perhaps just to clarify with the parents, which I think you might find helpful, is that school staff, school personnel, we are trained to be quite discreet with how we manage that. So we will not go to the child who was mentioned who's vaping and say, so
Don't
and so
talk to me.
said that you're vaping. Yeah, we would never
Yeah,
do that.
yeah,
We
yeah.
are very discreet. There's anonymity that's maintained in the whole process, and that's something we very readily share with the person who's volunteering the information. We tell them that don't worry, that you will remain anonymous, and not to worry if anyone asks you, or if that particular child approaches you to ask, were you the person that ratted me out? We do guide even the informant on how they can manage such situations. So I would say it's very all-encompassing, but I think it's important that this message goes out in that broader context of care, of sense of belonging that we talked about, for kids to know that they are doing something that's beneficial, entirely beneficial for your friend, right? You're
Yeah, just to add to
totally helping
Ashraf's
your
point,
friend.
Yeah.
just to add to Ashraf's point, I think the goal is about safety of the friend, and if you really
Yes.
care for them,
Yes.
it is not about getting them into trouble. It's not about snitching or
Yeah.
pauto. It's about keeping the
Yes.
friend safe because you know it is harmful. And how can
Yes.
you do this? It's the same thing. If you see your friends, um, having doing something that's illegal, right? Maybe they were doing something in the toilet with one another or something. And if you were to always with that context that this is about safety, I think I remember once and we're talking about a suicidal person. Um, they tell me, I don't want you to keep me alive. I want you to make me feel safe. They tell me this. And I think that's important. So, as friends, to help your classmate, your good friend to feel safe and to be safe, I think is the key issue
Yes.
that
Yes.
you would do. And I think it's a powerful piece to say to them. So I think
Yeah.
Ashraf
Yeah.
completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to also add this point, and I think it's helpful information to share with the parents, that the vast majority of cases that we manage in school, and I'm not talking just about vaping, but I'm talking about bullying, I'm talking about misbehavior, I'm talking about kids who potentially have mental health issues or are thinking of harming themselves. The vast majority of these cases are made known to the school through the peers, through friends stepping forward and sharing and volunteering that information with the school. Because I think we all know teachers are very busy. They have lots of things to do. They got marking, they've got lessons to prepare for. And we have many skilled educators who are savvy enough to pick up on these things when they're interacting with a child. Or we talked about the early signs. But the vast majority comes from friends stepping forward to help their friends. And parents, if I can just ask if you could echo that message at home and encourage your child to step forward, know that schools will manage it discreetly and that we are all working towards the same common goal. We are trying to provide support for that one individual who's
Yeah.
demonstrating at-risk behavior.
Yeah, so really seeing it as you are helping, and again back to your earlier point, it's restoring. We're not here to punish. We're here to restore. Guiding my friend to volunteer and say that I need help. I think that's where we are at. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I think we are actually running out of time, if I'm not wrong. So I want to thank all three panelists, and then maybe I'll just briefly recap some of the points. Vaping obviously does pose very significant health risks, but from today you can tell there are actually many steps that we can take as parents, as part of the community, to help to prevent it through education, effective communication and support. A lot of what all three panelists have shared actually are things I think we can do at home. Some of it's not easy. I mean, I'm really dreading some of the conversations, but I think they are needed. Right, it's an interesting point, and also I've always been a big believer as a parent that the schools can't do it alone. Your child can't do it alone. To a very large extent, as parents, our role is to be that person for them. And they may fight you from time to time, but there is a little voice in their head that listens to you, even though they're rolling their eyes. I've seen that and I believe in that. And I think because of that, what we know, how we know the information is very useful. I think some of the resources shared, the advice shared, are things that we can all take back as parents, that we can put in place. Also know that you're not alone. I think we shared some of the different platforms that you can get more information about. If you're not sure, you can refer your kids to it. Actually, read it together with them. You never know. They may tell you, but for all you know, they're listening, they're reading, they're absorbing it. I think some of the use here, you understand this. You may not want to listen to your dad and mom, but if it's online, anything that's online, more believable sometimes. So that's another platform as well. Also, I would like to also encourage everyone here, both at home and here, to really try to take this opportunity to build a very strong, supportive relationship with your child. I think the fact that a lot of you are here means that you genuinely care and you want to make that impact. It's not an easy journey. Right? I think we all know this, and they go through different stages in life. We walk the journey with them. But if you can have that supportive relationship, I think that's a great one as well. Have that safe space for open conversations, and most importantly, just stay informed. I think it's been very, very interesting for us to learn the information here. If you have any last words, maybe I can just invite each of you to just leave with one last advice or something.
Yeah, I think I just want to say a last word to encourage all parents. I think you're not alone. And the fact that, you took time on the weekday evening to attend this session and even tune in online, it shows that, you care for your child. Yeah. And I think you all are doing all your very best, but know that you're not doing this alone. If you do need support, please feel free to reach out to us. Yeah. It takes a community, really. In this day and age, being a parent now versus being a parent 30 years ago is very different. Okay, the times have changed. You have AI, you have vaping, you have social media. There's so many things that right now that's in the society. So I think it's even more so during times like this. I think we need to pull closer together as a community and see how we can really build stronger friendships, relationships, and a community to support each other. So thank you very much for tuning in.
Yeah, Ashraf?
Yeah, I'll just end off with this. I don't think it's a saying, but I think it's a phrase that many of us have heard, that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that's a very helpful frame of mind to have when we think about vaping. As I mentioned in my opening remarks earlier, that I think we can sometimes feel very overwhelmed when we focus on just the levers and our own locus of control. So I just want to encourage parents to remain motivated, stay positive, knowing that there's so many different players in this ecosystem who are working together, and that our efforts really mutually reinforce one another. So yeah, I'll just end off.
Yeah, and Dr. Fung, do you have anything you want to add as a last?
My last words is that I think we didn't really quite answer is that are there treatments available and how long does it take? I do think that there are treatments available if you have an addiction. Right, so vaping, you may not be addicted to it. If it's social, you probably can do many of the things that we discussed. But if it's truly an addiction, there needs to be professional help. And it will take between 1 month to 3 months of intensive work, but with the person ready. Okay, so addictions are difficult to treat conditions. Prevention is better than cure. Having a good relationship with your child can prevent them from getting into vaping.
Okay. All right, then thank you very much. And I want to please join me in thanking the panel today. Thank you very much for your very, very insightful sharing and lots of learning. We'll hand it back to our MC now.
Yep, yes. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we would like to invite you to scan the QR code on the screen. Okay. On the left is the QR code to the Families for Life webpage that was mentioned earlier, where you can have more information and resources. And the QR code on the right leads to the Families for Life parenting programs to equip you on your parenting journey. So there are other seminars, group programs, and even one-to-one consultations that are available for you. Okay, so we'll leave this on the screen for a few seconds. And just before we end, we would also like to invite you to share your feedback on the next slide. So please scan this QR code, and for our parents online, please click the link that's available to you. Okay, so let's give our panelists and moderator a round of applause. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Please have a great evening. Okay. So we have come to the end of the session, so please feel free to leave your feedback. And if you, thank you so much again to the panelists and moderators. If anyone has any dying questions that you really want to ask, perhaps they have a couple more minutes, but yeah. Thank you so much everyone for your time. Yeah, thank you.